U.S. President Donald Trump is insisting that Iran is begging to make a deal to end the war. The president, speaking at the start of a cabinet meeting on Thursday, said he wanted to set the record straight that he isn't the one pushing for a deal.
26 days in, we're really a lot ahead of schedule. The Iranian regime is now admitting to itself that they have been decisively defeated. They're saying to people, this is a disaster. They know it. That's why they're talking to us. They wouldn't talk otherwise. And they'll tell you, we're not negotiating. We will not negotiate. Of course they're negotiating. They've been obliterated. Who wouldn't negotiate? They are begging to make a deal.
U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff said there were strong signs Iran could be convinced to make a peace deal, even though Iranian officials have denied they are negotiating with the U.S. as the war continues in its fourth week. Trump also again criticized his NATO allies for not sending naval assets to secure the Strait of Hormuz.
Nobody's a match for the United States, but they're not a match for the United States. It's small potatoes. That's why I'm so disappointed in NATO, because this was a test for NATO. This was a test. You can help us. You don't have to, but if you don't if you don't do that, we're going to remember. Just remember this in a number of months from now. Remember my statements.
The U.S. has offered shifting objectives, including destroying Iran's missile and nuclear programs, ending Tehran's support for armed groups in the region, and pushing for the overthrow of Iran's theocracy. While the U.S.-Israeli campaign has hit Iran's military and government hard, killing top leaders and striking scores of targets, Iran continues to fire missiles, and there is no sign of an uprising against the government.
The wars in Iran and Ukraine are very much interlinked by Russia, High Representative Kaja Kallas warned on Thursday as she headed into a G7 meeting of foreign affairs ministers in Abbaye des Vaux de Cernay in France. She is calling on the United States to ramp up economic pressure on the Kremlin as it benefits from rising oil prices due to the conflict.
We see that Russia is helping Iran with intelligence to target Americans, to kill Americans, and Russia is also supporting Iran now with the drones so that they can attack neighboring countries and also U.S. military bases. So these wars are very much interlinked. So if America wants the war in the Middle East to stop, Iran to stop attacking them, they should also put the pressure on Russia so that they are not able to help them in this.
Kallas stressed that Europe would join a coalition to secure the Strait of Hormuz, carrying 1/5 of the global oil production, only after the cessation of hostilities.
Russia continues to wage its war in Ukraine, launching 153 drones in overnight attacks on the country as 6 regions face power cuts following strikes. 5 people were injured on Thursday morning after a Russian attack on an apartment block in Dnipro, according to regional officials. Power outages are affecting 6 regions, including Odessa, Sumy, Chernihiv and Kharkiv, following strikes on energy infrastructure, Ukraine's Minister of Energy reported. Ukraine's armed forces said that while 130 of the drones were intercepted, 16 hit their targets and downed debris fell in 5 locations. Meanwhile, at least 20 people were injured on Wednesday, including 7 in the Kharkiv region. Ole, a Kharkiv region resident, described the attack.
Я посмотрел на камеру, у меня камера стоит, и увидел, что моя машина горит. Но потом я уже, когда вышел, машина полностью сгорела. И вот это все произошло. Но был очень сильный взрыв был такой. Дом задрожал полностью.
The easing of US sanctions on Russian oil earlier this month is further enabling Russia to finance its military campaign in Ukraine.
European Council President Antonio Costa should exclude Hungary from sensitive discussions if Budapest fails to clarify alleged Russia leaks, former European Commission President José Manuel Barroso told Euronews. Hungary is sitting at the center of explosive allegations, suggesting Hungarian Foreign Minister debriefed his Russian counterpart before and after private EU meetings.
First of all, they should clarify. If the clarification is not sufficient, I think in some matters, the President of the European Council can perfectly say, now we are going to meet without Hungary. From a legal point of view, the European Union can launch infringements if there is a violation of Article 4 of the Lisbon Treaty. But beyond the legal measures, I think it even more effectively, politically, we can always show to a country that behaves like that, not respecting the basic principles of decency, that the countries can move on politically as well.
The former Commission chief said the clarifications so far provided by the Hungarian government are not really clarifications. The EU's foreign chief Kaja Kallas has demanded a full explanation, and the European Commission has called for a clarification. Budapest denies it held conversations during meetings with Russia.
Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un held talks in North Korea's capital on Thursday and signed a friendship and cooperation treaty. Lukashenko, who was in Pyongyang for the first time on a two-day official visit, hailed the document as fundamental and said that relations between the two countries are entering a new stage, according to his press service. It also quoted Kim expressing solidarity and full support for Belarus and speaking out against, quote, unlawful pressure on Belarus from the West. Belarus and North Korea are part of a push driven by Chinese President Xi Jinping and Putin to create what they call a multipolar world to challenge Western hegemony. They have both provided Moscow assistance in its Ukraine war, with Minsk serving as a launchpad for the invasion and Moscow stationing tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus.
A 42-year-old former French police officer suspected of murdering 2 women was arrested in Portugal. The victims were revealed by authorities as the suspect's current and ex-partners, whose bodies were found in Serra de Nogueira in the northeast of the country. The former cop, Cédric Prison, had been wanted by French authorities for several days prior to his arrest in the Iberian nation. Officials say he was detained by Portuguese National Republican Guard forces during an inspection on a major highway for forged documents and the illegal possession of a firearm. Prison was also traveling with his 2 children, aged just 13 and 18 months, who were found safe and taken to foster care institutions. Following his detention, Portuguese officials were alerted of pending French warrants for his arrest over charges of kidnapping his current and former partners and the 2 children. Media outlets say it was Prison's eldest son who had provided information on the burial site of the 2 women to Portuguese law enforcement. A delegation of the French gendarme is reportedly being deployed to Portugal to take custody of the suspect.
As the prospect for de-escalation in the Iran war remains uncertain, oil prices are rising, with the international benchmark for Brent trading above $106 a barrel on Thursday morning. Leading European indices opened with losses of between 0.4% and 0.8%, following a sell-off in Asian markets, amid conflicting statements from Iran and Washington over the progress of diplomatic efforts to end the war. U.S. President Donald Trump said a deal to end the Iran war is near, even after Tehran dismissed his 15-point ceasefire plan and with thousands of troops on the way to the Middle East, potentially for deployment in Iran. Iran, which has effectively closed the crucial Strait of Hormuz, sought to formalize its control over the waterway and impose fees on ships wishing to transit it. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow mouth of the Persian Gulf, is considered an international waterway open to all shipping. Imposing fees would end that and would likely be strongly opposed by the Gulf Arab states, the United States, and others.
Le cycle de Marie de Médicis de Rubens, qui est l'un des grands chefs-d'œuvre des collections du Louvre, est aujourd'hui dans un état de conservation problématique. À deux niveaux. D'une part, les vernis sont très oxydés, donc il y a cette espèce de couche jaune qui cache la force du chromatisme de Rubens. Il y a aussi des problèmes structurels qu'on a identifiés il y a déjà une dizaine d'années, qui est que la couche picturale sur certaines œuvres n'adhère plus au support et que donc elle risque de tomber. Donc il fallait absolument qu'on intervienne